Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Dear Profiler Pat, where you send me your questions and I give you my answer, a little advice, and I hope that advice helps, and I hope it helps everybody who's watching the channel. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to send me a question, send it to profilerpatbrown@gmail.com and put in the subject line, Dear Profiler Pat, so I know what it's about. And also check the different playlists so that you can see whether something is applicable to you in one of those different areas of life. All right, this question: should I be compensated for providing help or care for a relative? And I want to start out by reading your definition, and then I'll read you the letter that was sent to me. The word I want you to keep in mind is equitable. And the definition is this: something that is equitable is fair and reasonable in a way that gives equal treatment for everyone. Equal treatment, fair and reasonable. All right. A lot of times when we're asked to help, to give, let's say, babysitting, if you're a grandparent, babysitting for your grandchildren, daycare, or maybe you're asked to be a carer for somebody who is ill in the family, someone who's maybe a temporary thing, that they're at home from the hospital and they need somebody with them. It could be your parent. It could be any relative of yours that needs some kind of help with care, especially with Alzheimer's that looms as people get older. Sometimes the kind of help you're being asked for is shuttling back and forth to doctors. It could be whatever it is. A person doesn't have a car, they need a ride. There's all kinds of help people need. And if we love our relatives, certain relatives, we want to help them. But when does it become unbalanced, where you're providing these services for them and they're not either showing you any kind of appreciation or compensating you for the amount of time and money you're spending on it? And why is that? And sometimes there's reasons that maybe they can't financially compensate for something because they're poor. But then there's other times where they're simply not doing it because they just don't want to. They don't seem to think it matters. And that could be, that's a real problem when that happens, because maybe you're not getting appreciation or compensation. So let's look at this letter, and we're going to see some of these issues right here in the letter. I have a question, Dear Profiler Pat. So a few years ago in 2020, my sister and I visited a brother in Florida. He was retired. And at this time, he told us his wife had Alzheimer's. I knew he would need assistance. In 2021, I retired from nursing and moved to the area to be nearby. Now, I'm going to stop right here and say this. I don't know where you were living prior to going to Florida. And it seemed like a lovely area of Florida. So I don't know if moving to that location was part of your just general retirement plan. In other words, the question would be, did you quit nursing, quit earning money so you could help your brother? Or were you going to quit anyway, and therefore moving closer to your brother seemed like a good plan because you thought, well, I can live in Florida, be near relatives, and I can be helpful. So it was, if you quit your job just to go down there and not be compensated, I'd say there's a problem. If you were going to just retire anyway and thought it was a good location, then I think not a bad plan. And at this point, he doesn't really owe you anything because you're getting something out of it, which appears to be living in Florida, which I wouldn't mind in the winter. Keep my name in mind. Come visit. All right. So then until 2023, in November of 2023, his wife was ambulatory with a slowly deteriorating mental status. My brother has been taking 2 ski trips a week for a long time. And I stayed with my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, 24/7 for 7 to 10 days at a time during these trips. Okay, let me stop here. When you have someone that you're living with that has Alzheimer's or a terminal type of disease, it's just being in the house is extremely stressful. I know that my sister who had ALS, who died around the time I'm doing this video, approximately 6 months ago, she was pretty much housebound for quite a few years, and her husband was there with his wife, whom he loved. But here's a wife who needed care constantly. Now, luckily, she had long-term care. provider. She a plan. She didn't know she was going to get ALS, but she was planning for the future. She was a financial planner, so I think she just did a smart thing. So he lucked out by he had help 24/7. But even then, he wanted to be free for just a period of time of that environment, which it's like living in a hospital 24/7 as a patient. That's not fun for the patient either. But it's tough. It's tough for the person who's going through it, who's the one who is disabled or suffering, but also for the relative who has to watch this 24/7 and feel like in a cage, essentially. So that the person would want a break absolutely makes total sense. Now, when he goes away for 2 ski trips a year, so we're talking about a couple weeks a year. That's not unreasonable for someone who's having to deal with someone who's has Alzheimer's. Now, the question is, when you agreed to do that and you're staying with her 24/7, you have to look at it for yourself. Was this something that wasn't that big a deal to do twice a year? You're okay with that. In other words, you weren't working. You went over there and you didn't find it too difficult to be around her for the week, and you knew he was getting a break, and you were fine with it. That's perfectly. I think there's nothing wrong with you doing it or him going away. Should he appreciate you doing it? Absolutely. He should recognize that you came over to do that and not just say, oh, well, you're retired, so it doesn't matter. You got nothing to do anyway. That's the attitude that sucks. He's not paying you at that point. He's just saying, hey, come over and so I can go have fun. Now, what he could do, if he wants to be equitable about it and appreciative, he could then give you a trip someplace. Right? Because as you say at the very end, and I'm going to bring this up now because it's important when you look at the whole picture here. You say, my brother is a multimillionaire. Apparently, it seems like he's a cheap multimillionaire, just saying. So when a person's a multimillionaire, they can afford things. They're getting you for free doing the work. It's not your husband you're caring for. It's his wife. You're doing a nursing job, and you are, that's just your profession. You're doing a professional job for him so he can go have fun. And he's a multimillionaire. He should return and go, your turn. You should go have fun. Maybe you'd like to go to the Bahamas for a little bit. Did he ever do that? And if the answer is no, then I'm thinking he's not very appreciative since he has the money. Now, if he's poor, there's a whole different issue. If he's a good person, worked hard all his life, and has gone broke because of these days, if anybody has any kind of medical issues, you can go broke quickly. If he's sitting there struggling, just trying to get food on the table, yeah, you might say, you can't afford to feed me. Then again, he can't afford to go on probably a ski trip either. So, but you could give him the evening out where he could go relax. You could do whatever to help him out. That doesn't cost either one of you any money. Unless you're rich as crap. If you were rich as crap, you could say, hey, I'm going to give you the 7-day trip. You go away because you're struggling so much and I see it. And it's just exhausting you. So again, how much money does each person have so that they're going to be equitable when the other person is helping? All right. Now let's see. Then what happens? Okay. Then in early, so in November 2023, she developed an illness and everything went downhill fast. Since then, she is bedridden and can no longer converse. An aide now spends 11 hours a day to assist her with care. Okay, so I don't know the 11 hours a day. If she's bedridden and needs care, I don't know why it's just 11 hours, to tell you the truth. If he's a multimillionaire, it probably should be 24. But if he's willing to do the other hours of the day, in other words, he takes the break during the day, and when she theoretically is sleeping, that's when he does some care. Now, he's 80 years old, and you say he's in good condition, and you are 73, and you're in good condition, but still, it's very exhausting. So now this is 11 hours a day. At first, I went over twice a day, 7 days a week to assist and to give my brother a break. Well, I don't know if she's got a carer, why you need to be over there during the time there's a carer. Twice a day, I don't quite get it. If there's a carer there, that's the job of the carer. He doesn't theoretically have to do anything. Because when my sister had a carer, That's what the carer was there for. Now, my brother-in-law would say, "Hi, I'm going to the store. Do you want me to buy something?" My brother-in-law would feed the dog, take care of the house, drop in, bring her whatever something she wanted. But the carer was caring for her. He wasn't taking her to the bathroom. He wasn't giving her a shower. He wasn't doing any of that work. That was what the carer was doing. So I don't know what he's doing for those 11 hours and why you needed to be there to give him a break. I don't understand that. And 7 days a week, that's unreasonable. And I don't know whether you put yourself in that unreasonable position or he requested that unreasonable amount of time. Nope, nobody should work 7 hours a week. You're 73, you're retired. You should have some free time. And I think that's kind of ridiculous. And if he's not compensating you, I don't know, maybe you have a reasonable, you don't need money. If you don't need money, that's fine. But why are you doing this 7 days a week? I just think that's excessive. And he's multimillionaire. He can get a second carer to come in. He doesn't need you to do it. And why should he put that burden on you? I don't understand that. Unless you said you do it, and he said, all right. Sometimes we have to be sure that we're not being the sucker. We're not being the ones who we decide we're going to help, and somehow that's going to make us loved by some other person. Sometimes we like to feel useful, which is fine. But if we're doing it because we think we want people to say, "Oh, isn't that a good person?" Maybe the problem is with us, not with them. They weren't requesting it. We're just putting ourselves out there to do it because it makes us kind of a hero. I'm not saying that's what you did, but I'm saying you have to look at that. Did he really ask you to be there 7 days a week for no compensation, never giving you a break, or did you decide to do that? And I see grandparents do this as well sometimes. So they'll say like, "Well, I offer to babysit those children." Okay. So you did daycare for the kids for the first 3 years of their life while their parents went out and made each $80,000 a year and they gave you nothing. What? Oh, well, I'm a good grandparent. Well, that's lovely. But, you know, they chose to have those children and now they don't want to stay home with those children and they want you to do it for free. That's unreasonable. That's totally unreasonable. And if you're willing to do it for free, I'd say you're a sucker, or you want the attention of being the grandparent, or you just love being with children and so all of you are happy. It's equitable if it makes everybody happy. If you just can't, you just want to watch those kids 40 hours a week while they're working, 50 hours a week because they got to get to work and back. 50 hours a week you're watching those kids, but it makes you're bored in life and you just love being around children. Okay. And you don't need the money and you just rather them have the money. Bully for you, bully everybody. Everybody's happy. The question is, when you start questioning, why am I doing this? Or don't they think I deserve something? I watched my granddaughter when she was a baby. What I had happened was I had given my daughter and her husband $50,000 for materials, and they built a house next door to their house, which is my house where I live right now. And the deal was that I given them the money, they build the house, and I can live here as long as I want without rent, thank God. And in return, I said, does that mean I have to watch the baby? I asked that question, and my daughter said no. And then I always joked I sold my soul to the devil, but that's not actually entirely true. I did help out with the baby when she went back to work, and because she was concerned about the baby being with strangers, and I understood that. And they had built the house for me. So it was kind of an exchange at that point. When it got too much for me, which it did, because it's just that dog was so heavy. That baby was so heavy. And also it didn't like to take a bottle. It liked mommy's milk, and it just wouldn't take a bottle, even with mommy's milk in it, because she didn't like the container. My granddaughter wanted the proper container. So she would just not take the bottle and then wait for mommy to come home. And a nurse. Well, eventually she found some nannies, and the nannies came in, and I did a little bit of time, and then the nannies took over the rest of the time. So I talked it over with them. I was not paid for it, but again, they had done things for me that they weren't paid for either. So it was kind of an exchange. And when it was too much for me, I said, "It's too much for me. I can't do this." And she wasn't mad at me. She knew it was, and I wanted to go back. I had work I wanted to do. And so I was willing to do it for a short period of time because I was in a transition point, but I wasn't willing to do it on and on and on. And, I still help out with my granddaughter. I picked her up from school today. I take her to Girl Scouts sometimes, to soccer practice. I do things with her. And I do those willingly because I like to spend time with my granddaughter. And in return, my daughter often says something like, hey, I got these tickets to this thing tonight. And she'll take me there and we'll go out for dinner. And she'll do that as a, as kind of a thank you for some of the effort I put out, over at her house. So we have what I consider equitable. I haven't felt uncomfortable. I don't feel like I was used or abused. When my son came to stay with me for a while because he was unemployed and had come back from overseas, he stayed at my house. I did not charge him rent. And sometimes you should charge rent for those kids that are living in your house. But I did allow him to stay there. But the rule was he had to follow all the rules and also had to help out. And he did. He helped out. He cleaned the house for me, took out the trash. He was very good company. So actually, both of us, he was thrilled that he didn't have to pay rent. And I was thrilled somebody helped with the house. And I had somebody else in there to talk to. So again, equitable. Now let's go on a little bit more. So now you're doing this 7 days a week. After a few weeks, I cut back to once a day in the morning. There you go, because you said, no, that's too much. And finally, I told my brother I needed weekends off to rest. Good. That's what you should do. Tell him I can't do that 7 days a week. I don't know what his attitude was. You didn't quite say how he felt about that. I continue to stay with her when he goes on trips. All right. When he takes his cars in for service, I assist with that. When he is sick, I take him to the doctor. So again, how often does this happen? And when it does happen, like if you take him to the doctor, does he take you to lunch afterwards? What is he doing as a compensation thing? Something that shows that he cares about you as well. That's all I said. It should be equitable in some way, shape, or form. And if you're available and you can take him to the doctor and you don't mind, that's grand. And help all the servicing of the cars, whatever. Here you say this. Then barely back a month, he said he was ready for another week off. So his trip was in March, and now he's got back and now wants another trip. And it's getting to be a bit much. I pushed back and he's not mentioned it again. Okay. You stood up for yourself, which is what you have to do in these cases. Like, look, you just took a trip. I'm not ready to stay with your wife for another entire week. I don't want to do it. But I don't know what he did. Did he not go? Or could you just simply, why don't you just get a carer to come in and stay for that whole week? Maybe I could drop in once a day or whatever, because a lot of it depends with Alzheimer's, how much the person recognizes the people that are staying with them. Because if the carer is less important than you or more important than you know what I mean? It's just, you show up and they don't recognize you from the carer, so they don't care which one it is, then you're not really serving a purpose either. If she needs to have somebody near her who she feels safe with when her husband is gone, that's a whole nother matter. So again, you have to figure out what the situation really is. And then you say, let's see, here is my question. Not only do I provide help freely, it costs me money. Recently, he asked me to follow him while he took his vehicle to the shop again. It is a 30-minute drive one way. The previous 2 weeks was a lot of running to garages with him. He owns 3 cars. So I said to him, yes, I will do that, but I'd like a tank of gas. Well, this angered him, and he ended up waiting at the garage for his car repair as opposed to spending $40 for gas. Okay, there is the problem. And you said right here, my brother is a multimillionaire, me, not even close. Should I be feeling guilt and shame because I want a little compensation? Should I be a giving sister and not expecting anything in return? Well, is he a giving brother and not expecting anything in return? Or is he just taking? What is he doing in return? This is where my issue comes in. And what can he do not to be a pain in the butt? Okay, for example, I want to fly someplace. Now, in the old days, there was no way to get to the airport except somebody had to drive you there. Now there's a thing called Uber. So I say to myself, I have to take a morning flight. I have to be at the airport by 6 a.m. I have a couple choices. I can ask one of my relatives, my kids, hey, I got to be at the airport. Can you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drive me to, which is going to be 40 minutes, to the airport, and then you have to drive the 40 minutes back. Can you do that? And they feel, my mother, I should probably do it. That seems kind of unfair. So I have taken an Uber, for God's sakes. I can afford to take the darn trip. I can afford an Uber. So I just call Uber and get in the Uber. Now, on occasion, when my son kind of needed money, I called him up and said, look, I'm going to take an Uber to the airport, but if you want to take me, I will pay you the Uber fee both directions just because it's nicer to go with you than the Uber. And I'd rather give you the money than somebody I don't know. And he has a choice of saying yes or no. And if he says yes, then that's exactly what I do. He takes me to the airport, he picks me back up again, and I hand him money. And so I pay him because I think, well, he's gone out of his way, and I could have just gotten an Uber. So that's the question. When people ask you to do stuff for them, can you fix my car for me? Can you fix my roof for me? Can you come in and paint something for me? You're asking people to do all these things for you because you're related. And what are you doing for them? And vice versa. So if somebody's asking me to do all kinds of crap for them, I'm like, if you can afford to hire people, why are you asking me to do it for free? So that would annoy me. So again, is it equitable? So should you feel shame and guilt because you want to be compensated a little bit? No, you either want to be compensated with appreciation or compensated for what it's costing you in real money and in time. Because if you're spending all morning running around taking them out all these errand things, that's a morning that you don't have. I don't know how much fun he's to be with, but if it's just drudgery for you, why does he think you should run him all over town? He's a multimillionaire. Take an Uber, dude. Now he doesn't want to put a tank of gas in your car. He'd rather stay there and not give you $40. That to me is very concerning. So I wonder if you got a very selfish, self-centered brother. And because he's your brother, you still want to have a relationship with him, and you want to love him, and you want him to love you. But sometimes you got to put your foot down and say, look, I'm running you all over town. You think the gas doesn't come for free? Put gas in my car. And why don't you take Uber? Because I really don't want to do it. I don't mind helping you sometimes, but again, going to the doctor, Uber. Anybody can do it. If he's a multimillionaire and he's 80 years old and still a multimillionaire, he's not going to outlive his money probably. So that bugs me. Say when somebody's got no money, it's a whole nother issue. If there's just no way, if I were sitting at home and I had no money at all to be able, and I was having trouble driving, let's say I couldn't see very well anymore, and I was really struggling just to live on my Social Security, a low Social Security. Let's say that's my situation. And I need to get to the doctor. And I say to one of my kids, can you get me there? Well, maybe they would expect only a thank you because they're like, I don't want to take money from my mom. She's trying to put food on her table, and so I'm not going to do that. On the other hand, there's other things you have to think about. Like if I can't drive anymore, this happened with my father, and it really bugged my sisters and I. My father was having trouble driving and because he couldn't see properly anymore. And we kept telling him, just hire, it wasn't quite Uber days, but he still could get a taxi to go someplace. Because by the time you look at the cost of the car, the cost of the insurance, the cost of the gas, the cost of the repairs, if you're not going out to work every day and you're not going out constantly, you probably can afford an Uber on occasion to get where you want to get to. I've often thought about that. I love Hawaii, so I love Honolulu. If I lived in Honolulu, they've got a very good bus system that would get to most of the places I want. And then I wouldn't have to own a car. And then at the times when I'm like, hey, that bus is going to get me there, or it's going to be, I want to get home more quickly, I just get to take the Uber back. Compared to owning a car there, taking an Uber a couple times a week is probably pretty cheap. And then if I really want to go run around on the weekend, I could rent a car for the weekend and run around someplace and do whatever I wanted to do. And I know people in New York City do that a lot. Normally they take the subway, but on occasion they get a taxi, and on occasion they rent a car and drive away. So there's ways to do things with the money that you have. And sometimes the reason people don't do it is they're just being cheap, or they just think if they can get somebody else to do it for free, they're just not going to bother to pay for it. So why to get an Uber to go get my car, to go to the doctors when I can get my sister to drive me around like a personal limousine service, that's what happens a lot. I know kids, let's say they want the parents to always babysit for them so they can go out for the evening, but they don't want to pay. It's like, I remember when my kids were little, I never asked my parents once to babysit for my kids so I could go out for the evening. I waited till they got old enough, pretty much, I think, when they got old enough to, they're pretty old, like maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there. I asked a girl from the church I was going to, and I paid her to babysit. That gave the teenager a chance to earn some money, gave us a person older than my kids in the house. But I didn't just dump my kids on my parents all the time so my husband and I could go out and party. No. Now, is it okay to ask them? Sure. But again, how often is it happening? If you're asking your parents to do this, I've babysat my granddaughter while my daughter and her husband went out. I've babysat her overnight when they went away for the night. But they're not unreasonable on how often they ask. And again, I get a level of appreciation back, and they do something nice for me then. So if you're making it equitable with appreciation or compensation, some bit of that, you're going to have two parties that are perfectly happy. When you have one party that's getting more and more unhappy, there's something wrong there. Somebody is taking advantage of somebody. And so that somebody who's taking advantage needs to stop doing it and take care of their own damn business, or be more appreciative and compensate the person. And the person who's getting taken advantage of needs to put their foot down and say, look, I don't mind helping you out, but there's a little bit too much here. And it doesn't seem like you terribly much appreciate it. And I'm spending all my own money and not getting compensated for my time. And it's getting a little bit too much for me. And since you can afford it, brother, Mr. Multimillionaire, you really don't need my help at all, quite frankly. So if I'm giving you any help, it's only because you're my brother. I'm trying to be nice. Maybe or because I like your company for a period of time. But I want to know, how much the person is also appreciating, compensating. That's equal. Just make sure whatever you're doing, there's a level of equalness. And I say, if there's a situation which is really severe, where one person is it's just nothing, it's just they can't give you money, they need the help desperately, then you have to evaluate how much you can give yourself, and at least, if nothing else, they should appreciate the heck out of what you do if they can't compensate you in any other way. There's always ways. I'll tell you, there's always ways to compensate a person. And could be, I say, the compensation can be just appreciation. It can be thanks. It can be making a home cooked meal. It can be, there's a million things you can do to show somebody you appreciate what they're doing for you. But if both parties need to be okay with what's going on. Anyway, those are my thoughts. And if you've been in that situation, please do put your ideas below in the comments. And I look forward to reading them. And I'll see you next time. Again, new to the channel, like and subscribe. Bye.